For the last 10 years, the luxury industry operated on a very simple, very arrogant assumption. No matter how high they raised the prices, you would still buy it. And for a long time, they were right. They raised the price of a handbag by 20%, and the waitlists only got longer. They slapped a logo on a basic cotton t-shirt, charged hundreds of dollars, and people still bought it. The strategy looked flawless, the margins were astronomical, the growth seemed infinite, until, suddenly, it wasn't. In late 2024, Bain Company released their annual global luxury report, and buried in the financial jargon was a statistic so devastating, it sent the entire industry into panic. Between 2022 and 2024, the luxury market didn't just slow down. It didn't just plateau. It lost roughly 50 million customers. 50 million people who used to buy luxury simply walked away. And the most uncomfortable part? They didn't just disappear. In many ways, luxury pushed them out. So how did an industry built on aspiration turn its own products into cliches? And what happens to a brand when the people who made it cool decide they don't want to wear it anymore? To understand how the industry got here, you first have to understand who its most reliable customers actually were. The luxury industry likes to pretend its business is built on billionaires, oligarchs, celebrities, royalty. But that was never the full story. The growth engine of the modern luxury machine was never only the ultra-rich. It was the aspirational customer. The aspirational customer is the person who saves up for 6 months to buy their first designer bag. It's the young professional who buys a logo belt to celebrate a promotion. It's the student who buys a designer fragrance because they can't afford the jacket. They might only buy 1 or 2 luxury items a year, but there are hundreds of millions of them. And according to industry estimates, these aspirational buyers have represented roughly half of luxury fashion revenue in key markets, spending hundreds of billions of dollars every year. For decades, brands loved the aspirational customer. They built entire diffusion lines and entry-level products just for them. Logos on keychains, wallets, belts, fragrances, because that volume kept their stock prices climbing. But around 2019, the strategy started to shift. The conglomerates looked at their spreadsheets and decided that the aspirational customer was no longer enough. They didn't want to sell 10 bags to 10 middle-class people. They wanted to sell 1 bag to 1 very rich person for a much higher price. They wanted to elevate their positioning. And in the luxury world, elevation often became a corporate euphemism for aggressive, relentless price hikes. If you want to see what corporate overconfidence looks like in real time, just look at the price history of a Chanel classic flap bag. In 2010, you could buy a medium classic flap for around $2,850. It was expensive, yes. But it was still an attainable dream for a successful professional. By 2019, that same bag was around $5,800. And in 2026, that exact same category of bag is listed at around $11,700 in the United States. That is not normal inflation. That is luxury testing the limits of desire. And Chanel wasn't alone. Across the industry, brands raised prices much faster than general inflation could explain between 2020 and 2023. The brands blamed supply chain issues. They blamed the cost of raw materials. They blamed inflation. And of course, some costs did rise. But the math did not fully explain what customers were seeing. The cost of leather didn't triple. Neither did artisan wages or the in-store experience. The truth was much simpler. Brands raised prices because they believed the customer would tolerate it. They believed that price itself was a proxy for exclusivity. If a bag costs $10,000, it must be rare. If a t-shirt costs $1,000, it must be luxury. But they fundamentally misunderstood the psychology of their own consumers. When you raise the price of a product by 60% in 4 years, you are making a promise. You are promising that the quality, the service, and the exclusivity of that product have also increased. But for many consumers, the perceived quality did not rise with the price. At the same time, quality complaints, downgraded details, and the recent Italian supply chain scandals made the promise of craftsmanship feel harder to believe, and the consumers noticed. More importantly, consumers started asking whether the products were still worth it. The brands had broken the contract. They demanded ultra-luxury prices while too often delivering products that felt more mass-produced, more common, and less special than before. And the aspirational customer, feeling insulted and priced out, did the only thing they could do. They walked away. But the price hikes were only half the problem. The other half was what the brands were actually selling. If you walked into a luxury boutique in 2015, you were buying into a specific aesthetic. But by 2021, in many corners of luxury, the aesthetic had been overwhelmed by the logo. The design mattered less. The craftsmanship was harder to see. The branding became the product. During the boom years of the late 2010s, the luxury industry became addicted to logos. Logos were easy. You didn't need innovative tailoring or exceptional fabrics. You just needed to print your brand name as large as possible across the chest of a hoodie, and it would sell. The brands leaned in, monogram prints covering entire jackets, belt buckles the size of dinner plates. Customers turned into walking, paying billboards. And for a while, it worked. In an era dominated by Instagram and the need to project wealth online, the logo was the ultimate shortcut. It was a loud, undeniable signal that you had money. But fashion is cyclical, and the louder a trend gets, the harder it crashes. As prices skyrocketed and the economy tightened, the cultural mood shifted. Suddenly, walking around covered in interlocking Gs or massive LVs did not always look wealthy. It looked desperate, like you were trying too hard. The logo went from being a status symbol to a target. In a world dealing with inflation, layoffs, and economic anxiety, wearing a $2,000 neon logo sweater no longer felt aspirational to everyone. To many people, it felt out of touch. This gave rise to the quiet luxury movement. Many wealthy consumers, and those who wanted to emulate them, started moving away from loud branding and toward brands like Loro Piana, Brunello Cucinelli, and The Row. These were brands that sold softer signals: cashmere, tailoring, muted colors, invisible details, and clothing that only another fashion-literate person would recognize. The message was brutal. If you have to wear the logo to prove you have money, maybe the logo is proving the opposite. This left the mega brands stuck. They'd spent years training customers to buy logos, building entire product lines around monogrammed canvas and branded sneakers. And then the culture decided the most visible version of luxury was also the least sophisticated. Many of them didn't leave because they couldn't afford it. They left because they no longer wanted to be associated with the look. They didn't want to be the cliché. Now, if you want proof that the problem wasn't just the economy, you only have to look at one brand. While Gucci, Burberry, and parts of the LVMH portfolio were struggling with slower demand, one luxury house continued to grow: Hermes. In 2024, Hermes reported revenue growth of 15% at constant exchange rates. While much of the industry was slowing, Hermes kept moving. Why? Because Hermes played a very different game. While other brands chased the aspirational customer with logo-heavy entry products and expanded aggressively, Hermes kept its universe controlled and its footprint selective. Most importantly, it understood the difference between price and exclusivity. Chanel tried to create exclusivity by pushing the classic flap above $10,000. But if you have the money and the product is available, you can still often buy one. It is expensive, but expensive is not the same thing as exclusive. Hermes, on the other hand, built a system around scarcity. You cannot simply walk into a boutique and expect to buy a Birkin bag, no matter how much money you have. You have to build a relationship with a sales associate. You have to establish purchase history. You have to wait. It is frustrating, elitist, and deeply manipulative. But it works. Because it creates mystique. It makes the product feel rare. It gives the customer a sense of achievement when they are finally offered the bag. The other brands tried to manufacture exclusivity by raising prices. Hermes maintained exclusivity through psychology, scarcity, and control. And when the market slowed, the consumers who still had money did not necessarily want the mass-produced logo bag that had doubled in price. They wanted the one thing they still could not easily get. But the most dangerous long-term threat to the luxury conglomerates isn't the economy, and it isn't even the shift to quiet luxury. It's the next generation. The luxury industry has always relied on a specific pipeline. Hook the consumer young with an entry-level product, a fragrance, a wallet, sunglasses, then let them graduate to handbags, watches, and ready-to-wear as their income grows. That pipeline is the lifeblood of future revenue. It is how brands survive across generations. But Gen Z is weakening that pipeline. According to Bain, the decline in luxury advocacy has been particularly acute among Generation Z, and this matters because Gen Z was supposed to be the next wave of luxury consumers. They were supposed to buy the fragrance now, the wallet later, the bag in 5 years, and the ready-to-wear when they became wealthy enough. But many of them are not following the script. And it is not just because they are young and have less disposable income. It is also cultural. Gen Z grew up fluent in marketing. They can compare resale prices, quality reviews, factory scandals, and TikTok breakdowns in minutes. They don't have to trust the boutique. They can check the receipts. And increasingly, the receipts are not flattering. We are seeing the rise of no-buy and low-buy movements across TikTok and Instagram. We are seeing a structural shift toward the secondhand market. Consumers are not just buying vintage because it is cheaper. Many are buying it because they believe it is better. They are hunting down older luxury pieces with heavier hardware, thicker leather, and stronger resale value, actively choosing to bypass the modern conglomerates entirely. For this generation, a $2,000 nylon bag is not automatically aspirational. A logo does not automatically signal taste. A price increase does not automatically signal value. They are demanding authenticity, transparency, and actual proof. And the modern luxury machine, built on artificial scarcity, brand mythology, and relentless price elevation, is not always equipped to give it to them. That is why this is so dangerous. Losing an aspirational customer today is painful. Losing the next generation before they ever fully enter the luxury system is existential. So where does the industry go from here? By June 2026, Bain's numbers were even starker. Roughly 70 million customers gone since 2022, the direct result of years spent chasing higher prices and top-spending clients instead of rebuilding the base. The financial reports are showing the same pressure. In 2024, LVMH reported revenue of €84.7 billion, down 2% on a reported basis, while its fashion and leather goods division, its largest and most important business, was essentially flat for the year, a sign that even LVMH's flagship division had stopped growing. Kering's full-year revenue fell 12% in 2024, and Gucci, its most important house, dropped 23% on a reported basis. The brands know it. They're changing creative directors, pivoting away from the loud logos they relied on for years and easing off the most aggressive price hikes, afraid of alienating the aspirational customers they have left. But the damage is not easy to reverse. You can slow down the price increases, but you cannot instantly repair trust. You cannot make a customer forget the moment they looked at a $10,000 bag and thought, wait, why does this feel less special than it used to? For years, the luxury conglomerates assumed that the desire for status was strong enough to survive almost anything: higher prices, weaker perceived value, louder logos, colder service, and more visible contradictions behind the dream. They pushed the illusion too far. They assumed the magic of the brand name would always outweigh the reality of the product. And then millions of people woke up, looked at the bag, the belt, the sneaker, the logo-covered sweatshirt, and realized something profound. It's still beautiful, maybe. It's still desirable to some people. But it is not untouchable anymore. And once luxury stops feeling untouchable, the entire business model starts to shake. Curious to hear what you think about this in the comments. Have you stopped buying luxury brands recently? Thank you for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.